The first thing Daniel Mercer noticed was the light. It was nearly midnight when he pulled his car into the gravel driveway of the old farmhouse he hadn't seen in 3 years. The property was supposed to be empty. He had inherited it after his father's death, but never found the courage to return. Yet now, after losing his job in the city and watching his engagement collapse in a single bitter week, he had nowhere else to go, and the porch light was on. Daniel turned off the engine and sat in silence. The countryside was too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every small sound feel like a warning. A thin thread of smoke curled from the chimney into the cold October sky. Someone was inside. His heart pounded as he stepped out of the car. The front door, once chipped and faded blue, had been repainted white. The garden, which had been swallowed by weeds, was trimmed. Flowers bloomed in neat rows. He gripped the spare key in his hand. When he pushed the door open, he wasn't greeted by chaos or strangers rummaging through his things. He was greeted by the smell of soup and two wide, frightened children's eyes staring back at him from the hallway. A little boy, maybe 7, clutched a wooden toy car. A girl, slightly older, stepped protectively in front of him. From the kitchen, a woman's voice called out, gentle but firm, "Ely, Harper, who is it?" The woman appeared a second later, and Daniel forgot how to breathe. She was in her early 30s, her brown hair loosely tied back, exhaustion lining her face but strength in her posture. When she saw him standing there with a suitcase in hand, her face drained of color. I can explain," she whispered. Daniel stared at them. "You're in my house." Her name was Claire Whitmore. The children were Harper, 9, and Eli, 6. Claire didn't deny it. She didn't argue. She didn't run. Instead, she did something Daniel didn't expect. She invited him to sit down. They sat at the worn wooden dining table, his father's table, while the children peeked nervously from the doorway. Claire's voice trembled at first, but as she spoke, it steadied. Her husband, Nathan Whitmore, had worked as a caretaker for Daniel's father during the last year of his life. When Daniel moved to the city and rarely visited, Nathan was the one who maintained the property, fixed the fences, and paid the utility bills from Daniel's father's account. After Daniel's father passed, confusion followed. Paperwork was lost. Calls went unanswered. And 3 months later, Nathan died in a construction accident. Claire was left with 2 children, no savings, and an eviction notice. "The house was empty," she said quietly. "And Nathan always said your father wanted it to be full of life. He loved having the kids around." Daniel's jaw tightened. "That doesn't make it yours." "I know," she replied. "I just needed time." Silence hung between them. Daniel looked around. The floors were clean. The fireplace was lit. The house didn't feel abandoned anymore. It felt alive. "I'll leave," Claire said finally. "Just please give me a week." Daniel should have called the police. He should have demanded they pack immediately. Instead, he looked at the children again. Harper's eyes held defiance. Ela's held fear. And for reasons he couldn't explain, Daniel heard himself say, "You can stay, for now." The arrangement was meant to be temporary. Daniel moved into the small guest room upstairs. Claire and the children remained in the master bedroom. The first week was awkward. They moved around each other like strangers, sharing a train compartment. Claire worked 2 part-time jobs, one at a diner in town, another cleaning offices at night. Harper helped with Ela's homework. They were polite, quiet, careful, too careful. Daniel noticed how Harper flinched whenever a door slammed, how Eli woke up crying from nightmares. How Claire's hands trembled when bills arrived in the mail. One evening, Daniel found Harper sitting alone on the porch steps. "Do you hate us?" she asked bluntly. The question caught him off guard. "No," he said. She studied him. "A mom says this isn't our house, that we're borrowing time." Daniel sat beside her. "I haven't decided what it is yet." Daniel didn't know what to say to that. As days turned into weeks, something shifted. Daniel began repairing parts of the farm that had been neglected for years. Eli followed him everywhere, peppering him with questions about tools and tractors. Harper helped Daniel sort through old boxes in the attic, discovering letters written by his father. Claire remained distant at first, grateful but guarded, until the night everything almost fell apart. Daniel came home late to find Claire sitting at the kitchen table, face pale. "The bank called," she said. "There's still a lien on the property. Your father took a loan before he died." Daniel felt the floor tilt beneath him. How much? Enough to lose the house. The irony was cruel. He had inherited not just a home, but debt. The bank gave him 60 days. Daniel considered selling, walking away, starting over somewhere else. But when he imagined the house empty again, something inside him resisted. Claire surprised him. "I have an idea," she said. The farmland had been unused for years. Nathan had once planned to grow organic produce and supply the local market. Claire still had his notes, his sketches, his dreams. "It won't solve everything," she admitted, "but it could help." Daniel had no farming experience. Claire had no capital, but they had 60 days, tried his odds. The next weeks were relentless. They cleared fields at dawn. Daniel learned to drive the old tractor. Claire negotiated with the town's weekend market coordinator. Harper designed a small logo for their produce stand, a second chance farm. Eli insisted on watering everything twice. Money was tight. Sleep was scarce. Tension flared. One night, Daniel snapped after discovering a shipment of seeds had failed. "This was a mistake," he shouted. Who shouted? "I should have sold the place." Claire didn't back down. "Then sell it," she said quietly. But don't pretend you didn't start caring." Her words struck harder than any accusation because she was right. He cared, not just about the house, about them. The first market day arrived cold and uncertain. They loaded crates of lettuce, carrots, and early pumpkins into Daniel's truck. Harper arranged them carefully on the wooden stall. Eli handed out handwritten flyers. At first, customers passed without stopping. Then an elderly woman paused. "These are fresh," she said, inspecting a bundle of carrots. Claire smiled. "I picked at sunrise." The woman bought 3. Then 5 more customers followed. By noon, half the produce was gone. By closing time, they were nearly sold out. It wasn't a fortune, but it was hope. And hope can be louder than fear. But challenges didn't disappear. A sudden frost destroyed part of their second crop. Claire's diner cut her hours. Daniel received a final warning from the bank. The pressure mounted until one rainy evening when Eli went missing. Panic erupted instantly. They searched the fields, the barn, the road. Claire's voice cracked as she called his name. Daniel found him near the old oak tree at the edge of the property, clutching a small wooden box. "He was looking for Dad," Eli sobbed. "A mom cries at night." Daniel knelt beside him, heartbreaking. "I'm not your dad," Daniel said softly, "but I'm here." It was the first time he said it out loud. "I'm here." And he meant it. That night, Daniel made a decision. Instead of selling, he drove to the bank and proposed a restructuring plan. He presented their sales numbers, growth projections, even Harper's logo and marketing ideas. The manager was skeptical, but he saw something in Daniel's eyes: determination. They were granted 6 more months. When Daniel told Claire, she cried, not from fear this time, from relief. Winter came harsh and unforgiving. They expanded into homemade goods, Claire's preserves, Harper's baked pies, Daniel's handcrafted wooden signs. The Second Chance Farm became more than a stall. It became a story. Local newspapers featured them. Neighbors volunteered to help repair the barn. The community, once distant, leaned in. Daniel found himself laughing more, sleeping better, feeling useful. One snowy evening, Harper handed him an envelope. Inside was a drawing. It showed the farmhouse, smoke rising from the chimney. 4 figures stood in front. 1 tall man, 1 woman, 2 kids, all. Above them she had written, "A family isn't about who owns the house. It's about who keeps the lights on." Daniel swallowed hard. Claire stood behind Harper, watching him carefully. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not choosing the easy way." He met her eyes. "Well, for once," he replied, "I think I chose the right one." Spring returned with green shoots pushing stubbornly through thawing soil. 6 months later, the farm was stable. The debt had shrunk. The lien was nearly gone. But something else had grown stronger. One evening, Daniel found Claire in the field at sunset. "You don't have to stay," she said suddenly. "You could sell now, make a profit." Daniel looked at the house, at Harper chasing Eli across the yard, at the life that had filled the once empty rooms. "I know," he said. Claire's voice softened. "Why didn't you?" Daniel thought about the night he'd arrived to find strangers living in his house. He had felt invaded. Now he felt anchored. Because it stopped being just my house," he said. Claire's breath caught. "And what is it now?" she asked. Daniel reached for her hand. "It's our home." Years later, people in town would tell the story differently. They'd say Daniel Mercer found a widow and her children living in his house. They'd say it started with suspicion and debt and nearly losing everything. But what truly changed everything wasn't the farm or the bank or even the market success. It was the moment a man who had lost his direction chose compassion over control. The moment a woman who had lost her husband chose courage over fear. The moment 2 children learned that family can begin in the most unexpected ways. Second Chance Farm flourished, so did they. And every night, long after the porch light glowed against the dark countryside, the house remained full, not because someone owned it, but because someone stayed. And sometimes that makes all the difference.